The Victoria Island Country Club glittered like a jewel against the Lagos night sky. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across marble floors while the city's elite mingled beneath towering columns adorned with white orchids flown in from South Africa. Outside, luxury cars lined the circular driveway as valets scrambled to accommodate the endless stream of Range Rovers, Mercedes, and Bentleys. Maya Johnson stepped out of her midnight blue Rolls-Royce, her custom Diola sago gown flowing like liquid gold against her dark skin. At 32, she commanded attention not through ostentation but through presence. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, and a single diamond necklace rested against her collarbone, understated yet unmistakably expensive. Ready for another evening of small talk and champagne? James Okafor, her COO, emerged from the second car, adjusting his bow tie. Maya smiled. Actually, I'm looking forward to it. The Whitmore deal could transform our expansion into West Africa. Their manufacturing infrastructure combined with our fintech platform? We'd reach 50 million more people. If they agree to your terms, James reminded her. They will. They're desperate. Their quarterly reports show a company bleeding money. They need us more than we need them. Inside, the gala was already in full swing. A live band played contemporary Afrobeat jazz while waiters circulated with trays of champagne and canapés. Maya recognized several faces: CEOs, government officials, old money families clinging to relevance in Nigeria's rapidly changing economy. Across the room, Richard Whitmore spotted her and began making his way over, his wife Victoria in tow. Both were in their late 50s. Carrying themselves with the practiced grace of people accustomed to being the most important people in any room. Tonight, however, Maya could see the tension in Richard's shoulders, the forced brightness in Victoria's smile. Ms. Johnson. Richard extended his hand, gripping hers perhaps a moment too long, too eagerly. We're absolutely delighted you could make it. Victoria and I have been looking forward to this evening for weeks. The pleasure is mine, Maya replied smoothly. Your invitation was most gracious. Victoria leaned in, her perfume overwhelming. We simply must discuss the partnership. Richard has told me such extraordinary things about Tech Africa Solutions. 500 million in venture capital raised in just 3 years? Revolutionary. Absolutely revolutionary. Before Maya could respond, a commotion near the bar caught their attention. A young man, mid-20s, was laughing too loudly, his arm draped possessively around a woman in a dress that looked more appropriate for a nightclub than a charity gala. They were surrounded by a small group of similar young people, all holding drinks and radiating the particular arrogance of those who had never worked for anything in their lives. Richard's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That's our son, Derek. He's spirited. He's drunk, Victoria corrected, her smile never faltering. Please excuse me for a moment. As Victoria hurried toward her son, Maya watched Derek push away from the bar. His girlfriend, blonde, heavily made up, phone constantly in hand, giggled at something he said. They stumbled toward the restroom hallway, nearly knocking into a waiter. Tell me about your vision for the partnership, Richard said, clearly trying to redirect Maya's attention. We've prepared several proposals. Mr. Whitmore, perhaps we should discuss this tomorrow at the formal presentation, Maya suggested gently. Tonight is for the charity, after all. Richard's disappointment was palpable, but he nodded. Of course, of course. Tomorrow then. 2 o'clock at our headquarters. I'll be there. As Richard excused himself to greet other guests, Maya made her way toward the restrooms. The hallway was quieter, decorated with contemporary African art. She recognized a piece by Ben Nwanwu worth at least 2 million naira. She was admiring it when she heard voices approaching. Babe, you're being ridiculous, a male voice slurred. I'm just saying, did you see how your dad was practically bowing to that woman? It's embarrassing. That was the girlfriend, Emily, Maya remembered from the background research her team had compiled. They're desperate for some deal. Whatever. Dad's been freaking out about the company for months. Honestly, so boring. They rounded the corner and nearly crashed into Maya. Derek stopped short, his eyes traveling over her with the lazy assessment of someone who believed the world existed for his entertainment. "Whoops, sorry sweetheart," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "Didn't see you there." Maya stepped aside politely. No harm done. But Derek didn't move. Instead, he swayed slightly, studying her with growing confusion. "Wait, who are you? I don't remember you on the guest list." "Emily, do you know her?" Emily peered at Maya, her nose wrinkling. "No clue. Maybe she's with the catering staff? Though that dress is a bit much for serving drinks." Something cold settled in Maya's stomach, but her expression remained neutral. "Excuse me, I need to." "Hold on," Derek interrupted, stepping closer. The smell of expensive whiskey rolled off him in waves. "This is a private event. Like, seriously private. You can't just walk in here because you cleaned up nice." "Derek," Maya began, her voice quiet but firm. "No, seriously. This is exactly what's wrong with these events. They let anyone in, and then we have randos in knockoff dresses trying to network or whatever." He gestured vaguely, his wine glass sloshing dangerously. Security should have caught this. James appeared at the end of the hallway, his face alarmed. "Maya is everything." "Maya." Derek laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Okay, sure. And I'm the King of England." He turned to Emily. "Can you believe this? She's even got someone playing along." Emily pulled out her phone, already recording. "This is going to be amazing content." Party crasher caught at exclusive Lagos gala. Maya felt James tense beside her, but she placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Not yet. Let them finish. You know what?" Derek continued, his voice rising. "I'm tired of people like you thinking you belong in places like this. Thinking you can just. He raised his wine glass, and for one suspended moment, Maya saw the intention in his eyes. James moved to intervene, but it was too late. The red wine arced through the air in slow motion, splashing across Maya's gold gown, staining the custom fabric, dripping onto her Italian leather shoes. The hallway went silent. Even Emily stopped recording, her mouth falling open. Derek smiled, satisfied. "Now you know your place. There's the exit." He pointed toward the main entrance. "Use it." Maya stood perfectly still, wine dripping from her dress, her face an unreadable mask. She reached into her small clutch and pulled out a business card, holding it out to Derek with steady fingers. He took it, squinting at the text. His face went pale. "Maya Johnson, Chief Executive Officer, Tech Africa Solutions." "That's impossible," he whispered. "Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Your father's office." Maya's voice was ice. "We had a partnership meeting scheduled." "Had." She emphasized the past tense. "James, we're leaving." As she turned, Richard and Victoria appeared at the other end of the hallway, frozen in horror. They had seen everything. Maya walked past them without a word, her head held high, wine still dripping from her dress. Behind her she heard Victoria's anguished whisper, "Derek, what have you done? Do you have any idea what you've done?" The $500 million deal wasn't the only thing stained that night. So was the Whitmore family's future. The main ballroom erupted into chaos the moment Maya emerged from the hallway. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Every eye in the room locked onto the wine-stained gold dress, the composed expression, the quiet fury radiating from Nigeria's most powerful young CEO. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "Is that Maya Johnson? Did someone spill wine on her?" "No, I heard her assistant say someone threw it at her." The whispers grew louder, multiplying like ripples across a pond. Phone cameras emerged from designer clutches and jacket pockets. Within seconds, the hallway incident would be dissected across every social media platform in Africa. Maya walked through the crowd with her head high, James close behind her. She could feel the stares, hear the gasps, sense the shock waves spreading through Lagos's elite. Good. Let them see. Let them all see what had happened. Richard Whitmore burst from the hallway, his face the color of spoiled milk. Victoria followed, one hand pressed to her chest as if holding back a heart attack. Behind them, Derek stumbled out, Emily still clutching his arm, her phone now recording everything with the desperate hunger of an influencer who just witnessed career-defining content. "Ms. Johnson, please." Richard's voice cracked as he pushed through the crowd. "Please, wait. This is a terrible misunderstanding." Maya paused at the entrance, turning slowly. The entire gala had gone silent now, 100 people holding their collective breath. This was the moment that would define everything that followed. "A misunderstanding, Mr. Whitmore?" Her voice carried across the room, clear and precise. "Your son saw a young black woman in a hallway and assumed she was either staff or a party crasher. He then proceeded to throw wine on me, on a guest of honor at this charity gala, while telling me to know my place." She paused, letting each word sink in. "Please explain which part one misunderstood." The crowd's silence deepened. Several people had their phones out now, recording every second. This would be headline news by morning. Richard looked like he might collapse. "Derek, he didn't know who you were." "And that," Maya said quietly, "is precisely the problem. He didn't need to know who I was to treat me with basic human respect. But because of how I look, he assumed I didn't belong. That I was beneath him." She looked past Richard to where Derek stood, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. "Tell me, Mr. Whitmore Jr., would you have thrown wine on a young white woman in an expensive dress? Or would you have at least asked questions first?" Derek's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Emily had stopped recording, her face pale as she realized she'd captured evidence of her boyfriend's racism for the entire internet to see. "That's what I thought." Maya turned back to Richard. "Your company approached mine 6 months ago, desperate for a partnership. Your quarterly losses are approaching $50 million. Your infrastructure is outdated, your market share is evaporating, and your investors are losing faith. Tech Africa Solutions was your lifeline." She emphasized the past tense again, and Richard flinched as if she'd struck him. "Was," he repeated hoarsely. "Tomorrow's meeting is cancelled. The partnership is terminated. And Mr. Whitmore." Maya's voice softened, which somehow made it more devastating. "You raised a son who thinks respect is optional based on someone's skin color. That's not a business failure. That's a human one. Good evening." She walked out into the Lagos night, leaving behind a ballroom full of shocked faces and one family whose world had just imploded. By the time Maya's car pulled away from the country club, her phone was exploding with notifications. James sat beside her, scrolling through his tablet with increasing alarm. "It's everywhere," he said. "Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Someone already posted the video from the hallway. And Emily's footage from afterward is going viral." He looked up. "Maya, you're trending #1 in Nigeria. #3 across all of Africa." Maya stared out the window at the glittering Lagos skyline. Somewhere out there, in glass towers and corporate boardrooms, people were watching those videos. Making judgments. Choosing sides. "Good," she said finally. "Let them see what still happens when you're successful and black in your own country. Let them see that there are consequences now." Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Patricia Adeyemi, CEO of Adeyemi Manufacturing, the Whitmore's biggest competitor. Maya answered. "Patricia, I just saw the video." Patricia's voice was tight with anger. "Maya, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Angry but fine." "Good. Because I want to make you an offer. That partnership you were discussing with Whitmore Industries? I can do better. Better terms, better infrastructure, and I guarantee you'll be treated with the respect you deserve." She paused. We've been trying to break into fintech for 2 years. With Tech Africa's platform and our manufacturing capacity, we could dominate West Africa within 18 months. Maya felt something shift in her chest. Not just anger anymore, but purpose. Send me a proposal. I'll review it tomorrow. You'll have it within the hour. And Maya, what you did tonight, walking out with your head high, that was powerful. A lot of young people are going to see that video and know they don't have to accept disrespect, even from people with money and power. After they hung up, James was smiling. Adeyemi Manufacturing. They're bigger than Whitmore Industries, better positioned in the market, and Patricia has an impeccable reputation. I know. Maya allowed herself a small smile. Richard Whitmore is going to have a very long night. She was right. At the Whitmore estate in Ikoyi, Richard paced his study like a caged animal while Victoria sat frozen on the leather sofa, her carefully constructed composure finally shattered. Derek stood by the window, still drunk, still not quite grasping the magnitude of what he'd done. Do you understand? Richard's voice rose to a shout. Do you have any idea what you've cost us? That deal was worth $500 million. It was the only thing standing between us and bankruptcy. Dad, I didn't know. You didn't know? Richard's roar echoed through the mansion. You didn't know, so you just assumed? You saw a successful black woman and immediately thought she was staff? What is wrong with you? Victoria spoke, her voice hollow. The videos have been shared over 200,000 times. Everyone is calling Derek a racist. They're calling us a racist family. Our shareholders are already sending emails. 3 board members have requested emergency meetings. It's not that bad, Emily interjected from the corner, where she'd been scrolling through her phone. I mean, Derek made a mistake, but people forget things. This will blow over in a few days. Victoria's laugh was bitter. Blow over? You foolish girl. This is Nigeria. Maya Johnson is a national treasure, a self-made billionaire who built a company from nothing. She's been featured in Forbes Africa, given TED Talks, advised the central bank on financial inclusion. And my son just humiliated her at a charity gala. She turned to Derek, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. We're ruined. Everything your grandfather built, everything we've worked for, ruined. Derek's bravado finally cracked. I'll apologize. I'll call her right now and... It's too late for apologies, Richard said quietly, the fight draining out of him. He sank into his chair, suddenly looking 10 years older. She's already cancelled tomorrow's meeting. The deal is dead. He looked up at his son with something like despair. I hope that wine was worth it. Because it cost us everything. In a luxury apartment in Victoria Island, Emily was discovering her own consequences. Her phone buzzed with notification after notification, but they weren't the kind she was used to. Brands were dropping sponsorship deals. Followers were leaving in droves. Comments flooded her posts. Racism isn't content. Delete your account. You stood there and let it happen. She tried posting an apology, a carefully filtered photo with a long caption about learning and growing. But it was too late. The internet had made its judgment. Meanwhile, Maya stood in her penthouse, the ruined dress pooled at her feet, and watched the city lights twinkle below. Her phone continued buzzing with messages, support from fellow CEOs, interview requests from major media outlets, statements of solidarity from business leaders across the continent. But one message made her pause. It was from a young woman named Grace, a university student in Accra. Ms. Johnson, I saw what happened tonight. I'm a computer science major, one of only 3 black women in my program. Last week, a professor assumed I was in the wrong classroom. Today, I almost dropped out. But then I saw your video, saw you walk out of that gala with your head high, and I realized something. We don't have to shrink ourselves to make others comfortable. Thank you for showing me that dignity isn't negotiable. You just changed my life. Maya read the message 3 times, then looked at herself in the mirror. The wine stains were gone, washed away in the shower. But the memory of Derek's sneer, his casual cruelty, the laughter of his parents and girlfriend, that would take longer to fade. But it would serve a purpose. It already was. She picked up her phone and began typing a response to Patricia Adeyemi. The Whitmores had taught her an important lesson tonight, though not the one they intended. Sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was walk away and let consequences speak for themselves. Tomorrow, she would build something better. Tonight, she would rest knowing that the next young black woman who faced similar disrespect would have this story to remind her. Dignity has value. And those who don't recognize it will pay the price. Dawn broke over Lagos with the merciless brightness of a truth that could no longer be avoided. Richard Whitmore hadn't slept. He sat in his study surrounded by newspapers, both digital and print, each one leading with the same story. The headlines varied in their wording but not in their judgment. CEO humiliated at charity gala. Billionaire deal cancelled. Wine-throwing incident costs family empire $500 million. Maya Johnson walks out on Whitmore partnership after racist attack. That last word, racist, appeared in every article. Richard had called his lawyers at 3 a.m., demanding to know if they could sue for defamation. They'd laughed, exhausted and sardonic. Sue for what? There's video evidence. Multiple witnesses. And she never actually called him racist. The media and public reached that conclusion themselves. His phone buzzed again. Another shareholder calling an emergency meeting. Another board member requesting his resignation. Another business partner quietly distancing themselves from Whitmore Industries. Victoria entered the study carrying coffee neither of them would drink. She looked like she'd aged a decade overnight, her usual polish replaced by raw devastation. Channel 7 wants a statement, she said dully. So does The Guardian. And CNN Africa. What would I even say? Richard's voice was hoarse from hours of phone calls. My son assaulted one of the most respected business leaders in Africa because he thought she didn't belong at a party? That we laughed. God help us, Victoria, we laughed, before we realized who she was. Victoria sank into the chair across from him. We didn't know it was her. Does that make it better? Richard looked at his wife with genuine anguish. We saw a young black woman getting humiliated by our son, and we laughed. We laughed because we thought she was nobody. What does that say about us? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Upstairs, Derek was experiencing his own reckoning. His social media accounts had been suspended for harassment after thousands of reports flooded in overnight. His friends, the ones who'd surrounded him at the bar, laughing at his jokes, drinking his father's money, had all gone silent. Not a single text message. Not one call. Emily had broken up with him via text at 4 a.m. I can't be associated with this. My career is over because of you. Don't contact me again. He tried to watch the videos, the ones going viral, but couldn't make it past the first few seconds. The Derek in those videos was a stranger. Cruel. Arrogant. The wine arcing through the air in slow motion, splashing across that beautiful dress while he smiled with satisfaction. Now you know your place. Had he really said that? Had he really meant it? The shame was overwhelming, made worse by the dawning realization that this wasn't just about one bad night. It was about who he'd been his entire life. Every joke at others' expense. Every assumption of superiority. Every time he'd treated service workers like they were invisible. It had all been leading to this moment, this spectacular public destruction of everything his family had built. His door opened without a knock. Richard stood there, and Derek barely recognized him. His father looked broken. Pack your things, Richard said quietly. Dad, pack your things. Each word fell like a stone. You're going to your uncle's farm in South Africa for the next 6 months. No phone. No internet. You're going to work, actual physical labor, and think about who you want to be. Because the person you are now, I don't know him. I don't want to know him. But the company. The company is finished. Richard's voice cracked. The stock dropped 40% when trading opened this morning. Our 3 largest clients have cancelled their contracts. The bank is calling in our loans. We're going to lose everything, Derek. The house, the cars, the business your grandfather built from nothing. He stepped closer, and Derek saw tears on his father's face. And I'm not even sure you understand why. Derek wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the words wouldn't come. Because somewhere deep down, past the privilege and entitlement and learned prejudices, he knew exactly why. He'd just never had to face consequences before. I'm sorry, he whispered. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't bring back the deal. Sorry doesn't undo the humiliation you caused that woman or the legacy you've destroyed. Richard turned toward the door. You have 2 hours. The driver will take you to the airport. After his father left, Derek sat on his bed, the bed he'd slept in since childhood, and finally understood what he'd done. Not just to Maya Johnson, but to his family. To himself. The realization came too late to matter. Across the city, Maya sat in her conference room surrounded by her executive team. James had spent the morning fielding calls from journalists, potential partners, and supporters. The mood should have been celebratory. Adeyemi Manufacturing's proposal had arrived as promised, and it was extraordinary. Better terms, larger market reach, and a revenue projection that exceeded the Whitmore deal by 30%. But Maya felt hollow. You okay? James asked quietly as the others debated contract specifics. I keep thinking about that moment, Maya admitted. When he raised that glass. There was this split second where I could have stopped it. Could have told him who I was, pulled out my business card, let him see his mistake before he made it. Why didn't you? Because I wanted to see how far he'd go. I wanted to know if my instincts were right, that he'd humiliate me simply because he could. She paused. And I was right. But now I wonder if I should feel victorious or just sad. You can feel both, James said. You did the right thing. The Whitmores need to face consequences. But that doesn't mean it has to feel good. Maya's phone buzzed. Another message, this one from Patricia Adeyemi. Final draft ready for your review. Also, I'm setting up a scholarship fund in your name for young Black women in STEM. Figured we should channel this momentum into something positive. Interested in being involved. Maya smiled for the first time that morning. Tell everyone we're signing with Adeyemi Manufacturing. And let's schedule a press conference for tomorrow. If this story is going to dominate the news cycle anyway, we might as well use it to talk about what actually matters, building opportunities for the next generation. As her team erupted in excited chatter, Maya looked out the window at Lagos sprawling below. Somewhere out there, the Whitmore family was learning what it meant to lose everything. She didn't take pleasure in their suffering, but she wouldn't apologize for the consequences either. Sometimes the only way people learned was through loss. She just wished it hadn't required her humiliation to teach them. But if her story, her refusal to accept disrespect, could protect even one other young woman from similar treatment, then maybe the wine-stained dress had been worth it. The Whitmore estate, once a symbol of 3 generations of success, now felt like a mausoleum. Moving boxes lined the marble hallways. Furniture tagged for auction sat covered in plastic sheets. The family had 72 hours before the bank seized the property. Richard stood in his study, now stripped of the mahogany furniture and first edition books, and dialed Maya's number for the 11th time that week. Like the previous 10 attempts, it went straight to voicemail. Ms. Johnson, this is Richard Whitmore again. Please, I'm begging you to reconsider. Not for me. I understand the deal is gone, but perhaps a statement of reconciliation? Something that might help rebuild our reputation? I've sent the apology letters. I've made the donations to the charities you support. I'm trying to make this right. He hung up, knowing she wouldn't call back. Why would she? He'd rewatched the gala footage 100 times, seen the way he and Victoria had laughed before realizing who Maya was. The shame was visceral, inescapable. Victoria appeared in the doorway, holding her phone with trembling hands. Derek just sent a video. He wants us to post it. They watched together as their son, thin and sunburned from weeks of manual labor on the South African farm, stared into the camera with red-rimmed eyes. My name is Derek Whitmore, and 6 weeks ago I committed an act of incredible cruelty and prejudice against Ms. Maya Johnson. His voice cracked. I saw a successful black woman and immediately assumed she didn't belong in the same space as me. I humiliated her publicly, threw wine on her, told her to know her place. And I did it because I've spent my entire life believing that my privilege made me superior to others. He wiped his eyes roughly. I've lost everything. My family's company, my relationships, my reputation. But that's not why I'm apologizing. I'm apologizing because what I did was wrong. Fundamentally, morally wrong. And I'm apologizing because the fact that I didn't know who Ms. Johnson was doesn't matter. I should have treated her with respect regardless of who she was or what she did for a living. Derek leaned closer to the camera. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking that other people, especially young people who grew up with privilege like I did, see this and understand. Prejudice has consequences. Not just for the people you hurt, but for everyone around you. I destroyed my family because I never learned to see people as equals. Don't make my mistake. The video ended. Richard and Victoria sat in silence. Should we post it? Victoria finally asked. Will it matter? Richard's voice was hollow. We've sent everything, apology letters, donations, public statements. She hasn't responded to any of it. Then why are we still trying? Richard looked at his wife, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. They'd built their empire on handshake deals and reputation. On being people others wanted to do business with. And in one night, one moment of revealed character, it had all crumbled. Because we need to, he said finally. Not because it will fix things with Ms. Johnson. Because it's the right thing to do. We raised a son who thought he could treat people that way. We laughed along with him before we knew who his victim was. We need to own that publicly. They posted the video. Within an hour, it had been viewed 2 million times. The comments were split. Some praised Derek's accountability, others called it too little too late. Many pointed out that the apology only came after consequences, not before. One comment, liked by thousands, read, "He's not sorry he did it. He's sorry he got caught." Meanwhile, Emily had attempted her own redemption arc. After losing over half her followers and all her brand sponsorships, she'd posted a tearful video about learning from mistakes and being an ally. The response had been brutal. You recorded a black woman being assaulted for content. You laughed while it happened. You only apologized when it hurt your career. Her influencer career was finished. She'd taken a job at her father's insurance company in Cape Town, working in a cubicle, learning what life was like for people who couldn't coast on appearance and connections. Back in Lagos, Maya sat in her new corner office. Adeyemi Manufacturing had given her an entire floor for Tech Africa's expansion team. The partnership announcement had been met with overwhelming support. Their stock had jumped 23%. 3 major European investors had requested meetings. Another package from the Whitmores, James announced, carrying a FedEx box into her office. That makes 17. Maya didn't open it. They sat in a pile in her storage room. Flowers, jewelry, handwritten letters from Richard and Victoria, art pieces, donations made in her name to various charities. She'd acknowledged none of them. You know people think you're being too harsh, James said carefully. Derek's video has over 5 million views. He seems genuinely remorseful. Maybe he is, Maya said quietly. But James, do you know how many Derek Whitmores I've encountered in my career? Men who assumed I was an assistant when I was the CEO in the meeting? Investors who asked to speak to whoever's really in charge? People who questioned my credentials, my intelligence, my right to be in the room. She looked up at him. Dozens. Hundreds. maybe. I know. The difference is those other ones didn't cost me a $500 million deal or publicly humiliate me. They were just death by 1,000 cuts. The daily microaggressions that successful black women face constantly. She stood, walking to the window. Derek's sorry because there were consequences. But would he have learned anything if I'd quietly accepted his apology, let his family save face, moved forward with the deal? Or would he have just learned that apologies are sufficient, that privilege can buy forgiveness? James was quiet for a moment. You're making him an example. I'm making him accountable. There's a difference. Maya turned back to face him. And maybe, the next privileged kid who thinks about treating someone as less than human will remember what happened to Derek Whitmore and think twice. That evening, Maya received an unexpected email. Not from the Whitmores, but from Derek's uncle in South Africa, the one whose farm Derek had been sent to. Ms. Johnson, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing not to plead Derek's case, but to share an observation. My nephew arrived here broken, entitled, and unable to grasp what he'd done. 3 months later, he's different. He works alongside men and women of all backgrounds, earning their respect through labor rather than expecting it through family name. He's learning indigenous languages, eating humble meals, understanding what real work means. I'm not asking you to forgive him or restore his family's fortune. But I thought you might want to know that your refusal to accept empty apologies has forced genuine change. Derek is becoming a better person because you held firm. Sometimes the greatest kindness is refusing to enable. Thank you for that. Thomas Whitmore. Maya read the email 3 times. She thought about Grace, the university student in Accra who'd been inspired to stay in her program. About the dozens of other messages she'd received from young black professionals who'd been emboldened to demand respect in their own workplaces. About the fact that sometimes accountability looked like mercy, even when it felt like cruelty. She didn't respond to Thomas's email. She didn't acknowledge the Whitmores' desperate attempts at redemption. But she did save the email in a folder labeled Consequences. Because that's what this had always been about. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Just the simple, powerful idea that actions have consequences, and dignity is non-negotiable. Even when, especially when, that lesson came at the highest price. 6 months after the gala, Maya stood before 200 entrepreneurs at the Lagos Business Summit, the same venue where she'd been humiliated now transformed into her platform. The irony wasn't lost on her. When I started Tech Africa Solutions 8 years ago, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall, I was told repeatedly that I didn't belong. Too young. Too inexperienced. Too. She paused, letting the unspoken word hang in the air. Different. I've had investors assume I was the secretary. Partners who wanted to meet my real boss. Countless moments where my competence was questioned because of how I looked rather than what I'd achieved. The room was silent, every person present understanding exactly what she meant. 6 months ago, something happened at this very venue that many of you saw or heard about. A moment that revealed what many of us already knew, that prejudice and entitlement still exist, even in spaces where they shouldn't. She clicked her remote, and the screen behind her displayed not the gala footage, but something else. Graphs showing Tech Africa's growth since that night. Revenue up 47%. Market expansion into 12 new countries. 300 jobs created. But I'm not here to talk about that night. I'm here to talk about what happened after. Another click. Images of the Adeyemi partnership announcement, news coverage of their expansion, photos of the new scholarship fund. Instead of accepting apologies that would have maintained a failing status quo, I chose a different path. I chose to build something better. She walked to the edge of the stage. The Whitmore partnership would have been worth $500 million over 5 years. The Adeyemi partnership, the one I chose instead, is projected at $750 million over the same period. But more importantly, Patricia Adeyemi and I have created something meaningful. The Dignity in Business Initiative. The screen changed again, showing young faces. Dozens of them, all black, all brilliant, all scholarship recipients. These are the 83 students we've sponsored in the past 6 months. Computer science majors, engineers, business students. Each one selected not just for their grades, but for their potential to transform their communities. Maya's voice softened. Someone asked me recently if I felt victorious. If watching the Whitmore empire crumble gave me satisfaction. She shook her head. It didn't. It doesn't. But what does give me satisfaction is this. Every single one of these students knows they belong. Knows their worth isn't determined by others' prejudices. Knows that dignity is non-negotiable and that there are consequences when people forget that. The applause started slowly, then built like thunder. Maya waited for it to quiet. The Whitmore family lost everything. Their company declared bankruptcy last month. Their assets were sold to cover debts. The Victoria Island Country Club revoked their membership. She paused. And I had nothing to do with any of it. I simply walked away and let consequences speak for themselves. In the audience, Patricia Adeyemi stood, beginning a standing ovation that swept through the room. Maya nodded her thanks, then held up a hand for quiet. But this story isn't over. Because transformation is possible, when it's genuine and earned. She clicked to a new image. Derek Whitmore, sunburned and lean, standing with a group of farm workers in South Africa. This was sent to me last week by Derek Whitmore's uncle. The young man who threw wine on me has spent 6 months working on a farm, learning what respect and hard work actually mean. His uncle tells me he's changed. That he's humble now. That he understands what he did wrong not because he lost everything, but because he genuinely comprehends the harm he caused. She looked out at the audience. I don't know if that's true. I may never know. But I do know this. Accountability creates space for real change. Enabling bad behavior through premature forgiveness only teaches people that apologies are sufficient. They're not. Action is what matters. Maya's presentation concluded with announcements of new partnerships, expansion plans, and a surprise. Tech Africa was opening its first office in South Africa, focusing specifically on rural fintech solutions. We're bringing technology and economic opportunity to places that have been overlooked, she explained. Not to punish anyone, but to build the future we want to see. One where talent is recognized regardless of background. Where respect is standard, not exceptional. Where consequences teach rather than simply punish. As the summit concluded, Maya returned to her office to find an unexpected visitor waiting. Thomas Whitmore, Derek's uncle, a weathered man in his 60s with kind eyes. Ms. Johnson, thank you for seeing me. He remained standing, respectful. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did for my nephew. Maya's eyebrow raised. What I did to him, you mean? No. Thomas smiled slightly. What you did for him. Derek arrived at my farm a spoiled, entitled boy who'd never faced real consequences. He thought the world owed him respect because of his last name. You shattered that illusion, and in doing so, you gave him the opportunity to become someone worth respecting. He could have learned that lesson without destroying his family's company. Could he? Thomas sat, uninvited but somehow not presumptuous. Ms. Johnson, I knew Derek's grandfather. Built Whitmore Industries from nothing, worked 18-hour days, treated every employee with dignity. By the time Richard inherited it, the hunger was gone. The appreciation for what they had. Richard raised Derek in luxury and entitlement, never teaching him that respect is earned, not inherited. He leaned forward. What you did, refusing the easy forgiveness, letting the consequences play out, you taught my entire family something Richard and Victoria failed to teach. Actions matter. Character matters. And privilege without responsibility leads to ruin. Maya studied him carefully. You didn't come here to thank me. What do you want? Thomas pulled out a folder. Derek has spent 6 months working on my farm. He's learned indigenous languages, worked alongside people he would have dismissed before, begun to understand his privilege. He wants to stay another year, and I'm letting him. But he also wants to do something meaningful with this experience. He opened the folder, revealing a business proposal. A social enterprise focused on rural economic development in South Africa. Microloans for small farmers. Technology training. Sustainable agriculture practices. Derek wants to build it. Not to redeem himself. He knows that's not how redemption works, but because he's finally found something worth building. And he needs funding, Maya guessed. No. Thomas smiled. He needs advice. He knows he's not qualified to lead something like this. But he thought. He paused, choosing words carefully. He thought you might know someone who could mentor such a project. Not him. He understands he's lost that privilege. But the project itself. The idea of using privilege and resources to actually help people rather than just maintaining power. Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying the proposal. It was rough, clearly written by someone new to this kind of work, but the core idea was solid. The market research was thorough. The understanding of the problems faced by rural South African farmers was genuinely informed. I'll review this, she said finally. And I'll send it to someone I know at the African Development Bank who specializes in rural enterprise. No promises. No guarantees. And Derek stays in South Africa. I'm not interested in photo ops or reconciliation narratives. He doesn't want those either, Thomas said quietly. He just wants to do something good with the lesson you taught him, even if he'll never be part of it publicly. After Thomas left, Maya sat with the proposal for a long time. James found her there an hour later, the pages spread across her desk. You're actually considering this? He asked. I'm considering whether accountability stops at consequences or extends to opportunity for change, Maya replied. Derek Whitmore destroyed his life and his family's legacy. But if he's genuinely learned, if he's actually transformed, should that transformation go unused? Or should it become part of the solution? You're not responsible for his redemption. No, Maya agreed. But I am responsible for what kind of world I'm building. One that only punishes? Or one that creates space for genuine change? She made a decision. She sent the proposal to her contact at the African Development Bank with a note. Raw but promising. The founder has made serious mistakes but appears committed to learning from them. Worth evaluating on its own merits, independent of his history. Then she called Patricia Adeyemi. How would you feel about expanding our rural initiative to include a partnership with small-scale farmers in South Africa? I think I've found a project that aligns with our values. 3 months later, Maya stood at a ribbon-cutting ceremony in rural Eastern Cape, South Africa. The new Tech Africa Adeyemi Rural Development Center would serve 300 farming families, providing microloans, technology training, and market access. Derek Whitmore was nowhere to be seen at the ceremony. He was, according to Thomas, working in the fields with the farmers who would benefit from the program, learning their names, understanding their challenges, building relationships based on respect rather than his former sense of superiority. Maya had insisted he not attend the ribbon cutting. This wasn't about his redemption story. It was about the farmers, the community, the future being built. But that evening, as she toured the facility, she found a simple wooden plaque mounted by the main entrance. It read, "Dignity is non-negotiable. Respect is earned. Transformation is possible. But only through genuine accountability." Thomas appeared beside her. Derek made that. Woodworking is one of the skills he's learned. He wanted you to know that he understands, really understands, what you taught him. Maya traced the carved letters with her finger. He'll never work for this organization. He knows. He doesn't want to. He's content working in the fields, earning minimum wage, learning to be someone different than who he was. Thomas paused. Is that enough? Does that count as transformation? I don't know, Maya admitted. But it's honest. And that's more than most people achieve. A year after the gala, Maya returned to the Victoria Island Country Club for another charity event. The venue had been transformed, its leadership replaced, its membership policies revised to be more inclusive. The organization had reached out specifically, asking Maya to be their keynote speaker about diversity in business. As she entered the same hallway where wine had once stained her dress, she felt nothing but purpose. The incident had sparked nationwide conversations about privilege, prejudice, and accountability. 7 major corporations had revised their diversity policies. 3 universities had created programs specifically focused on combating bias in business settings. The Whitmore family was rebuilding, slowly, humbly. Richard had taken a consulting job, advising companies on the importance of corporate culture and respect. Victoria volunteered at women's business development programs, teaching from her mistakes. Derek remained in South Africa, still working, still learning, no longer seeking redemption but simply trying to live differently. And Maya. Tech Africa Solutions had become the 5th most valuable company in Africa. The Dignity in Business initiative had sponsored over 300 students. Her partnership with Adeyemi Manufacturing had created 2,000 jobs across 12 countries. But more than the numbers, more than the success, she'd proven something essential. That dignity was non-negotiable. That consequences mattered. That sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was refuse to accept disrespect, even, especially, when it cost others everything. In her keynote speech that night, Maya spoke about the incident for the first time publicly since it happened. Not to shame or punish, but to teach. A year ago, in this very hallway, someone threw wine on me because he made assumptions based on how I looked rather than who I was, she said, her voice strong and clear. But this story isn't about that moment. It's about what came after. About choosing to build something better rather than accepting the status quo. About understanding that accountability isn't cruelty, it's the foundation of real change. She looked out at the audience, diverse now in ways it hadn't been a year ago, filled with young black professionals who'd been inspired by her refusal to accept disrespect. The person who humiliated me lost everything. His family lost everything. And I won't pretend that didn't matter. Consequences are real, and they should be. But consequences without opportunity for transformation are just punishment. What matters is what we build from the rubble. Maya clicked to her final slide, a photo of the Rural Development Center in South Africa, farmers working alongside volunteers, technology bringing opportunity to communities that had been overlooked. This is what accountability looks like when it's done right. Not just tearing down what's wrong, but building what's right. Not just punishing prejudice, but creating systems where respect is standard. Not just making examples, but creating examples worth following. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. But what mattered more were the conversations that followed. The young professionals who approached Maya with their own stories of disrespect, now armed with the knowledge that they didn't have to accept it. The business leaders who committed to examining their own biases. The parents who vowed to raise children who valued character over privilege. As Maya left the country club that night, she passed the hallway one more time. A small plaque had been mounted on the wall, installed by the new management. Dignity Hallway, a reminder that respect is not optional, and consequences are real. She smiled. The wine stain was gone, washed away like so many temporary marks. But the lesson remained, carved into the consciousness of everyone who'd witnessed what happened when someone forgot that dignity was non-negotiable. The Whitmore Empire had fallen. But in its place, something better had grown. Not because Maya sought revenge, but because she refused to let disrespect go unanswered. Not because she wanted to destroy, but because she knew that sometimes destruction was necessary for real growth. Derek Whitmore was still in South Africa, working in fields and learning humility. His parents were rebuilding their lives on foundations of genuine respect rather than inherited privilege. Emily had found work that didn't depend on appearance or connections, learning what it meant to earn success. And Maya? She continued building, creating opportunities, refusing to accept anything less than full respect, Not just for herself but for everyone who came after her. Because that's what power looked like in the new Africa. Not the old hierarchies of wealth and privilege, but the new reality where excellence demanded recognition, where dignity was absolute, and where those who refused to adapt would find themselves left behind. The wine stain was gone. But the lesson remained. And the world was better for it.